Welcome to the African American Read-In City of Tampa Day. We are so excited about this. This is the first year we've done the City of Tampa Day, and we look forward to having many, many more for the African American Read-In. We're ready to get started now, and our moderator, Dr. Lewis, will take it from here.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Felita Lewis, Executive Director for Family and Community Engagement. And I have the pleasure of being one of your moderators for the day, along with Ms. Angela Fulwood, Supervisor, also from Family and Community Engagement. So today you will hear a live read aloud from our very own City of Tampa Mayor. Mayor Castor is reading segments from The Color of Law, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America by Richard Rothstein. In The Color of Law, published by Liverite in May 2017, Rothstein argues with exacting precision and fascinating insight how segregation in America, the incessant kind that continues to dog our major cities, has contributed to so much recent social strife, is the byproduct of explicit government policies at the local, state, and federal levels. We will leave time at the end for Q&A and for reflection. You will also have an opportunity to add questions and comments in the Q&A pane for our interactive discussion. Next slide. So, who is Mayor Jane Castor? Mayor Jane Castor is the 59th mayor of the City of Tampa. Born and raised in Tampa, Mayor Castor has spent a lifetime in service to the community, first as the police officer, then as Tampa's first, and I said first, female chief of police, and finally as the city's 59th mayor. She graduated from Chamberlain High School here in Tampa, Florida, and attended the University of Tampa on an athletic scholarship. Under her leadership, the City of Tampa has also received several awards and recognitions. So without any further delay, we will now hear from our very own Mayor Jane Castor.
All right, good morning. Thank you so much, Dr. Lewis, for that introduction. And thank you also, Ms. Fulwood, everyone who had a hand in making this happen today. It's very exciting for me, and it is quite an honor to have been invited here to participate. It's always a joy for me to be able to talk to the future of our community, and those are our students. Now, I don't know how many people have read the book, The Color of Law. It was actually recommended to me some months back after the civil unrest, after the murder of George Floyd. And if you haven't read it, I would suggest that you do. It is an eye-opener, and it is a presentation of facts, of little-known facts as far as from my personal perspective, because a lot of this I was unaware of. The Chamber of Commerce with the City of Tampa, Tampa Bay Chamber of Commerce, actually held a session in which Richard Rothstein talked about The Color of Law, talked about his research, and talked about a number of the findings that he had presented in his book. And so I'll just talk about some of the issues that were very enlightening to me, and then we can open it up for a discussion and for questions if that's amenable to everyone. So with The Color of Law, you hear a lot of talk about segregation, about generational wealth, and for a lot of Americans, we may feel that segregation was done away with, and therefore the problems associated with it were done away with in ways that, for example, I was personally affected was in school busing, which I'm 61 years old, graduated from high school in '77, and I actually attended Young Junior High for 7th grade. That was the first year of busing, and it was that's how it affected me personally. And then we had a number of students and friends, lifelong friends of mine that were bused into Chamberlain High School when I went to high school. So that's sort of the context for me. But when you read The Color of Law, you look all the way back to, for example, World War II. After World War II ended and all of the soldiers came back, there was a lack of housing nationwide. And that is the way that public housing, as we have come to know it, was originally developed for those returning soldiers and their families. And we look also at one of the best ways to, hopefully many of you have heard the term generational wealth, where as a family, you can build a level of wealth in some way to be able to pass that on to the next generation. They can build upon that, and through the generations, you're able to build the wealth that is passed down. The best way to do that is through home ownership, to be able to pass that on. So here we have a number of soldiers, Black, white, and Latino, coming back from World War II that need this housing. So the government builds public housing, but only white people are allowed to live there. So eventually they build separate public housing that African Americans are allowed, and Hispanics and Latinos are allowed to live in. So then, the federal government understands that as individuals are buying houses, they're having to go through individual processes with all of the banks. So they develop the VA loans, Veteran Administration VA loans, that help these returning soldiers and military personnel to purchase homes and to get a start in that generational wealth. Well, African Americans weren't allowed to participate in the VA loan program. So that meant if African American families wanted to buy a home, they had to go through that private process through an individual bank. And in a lot of cases, if not all, there weren't any protections like there were with the VA loans. In other words, you could pay on your house, you could be on time in those mortgage payments for 10 years, miss a payment or be late on a payment, and your house could be repossessed. So that was one of the ways. And then there were other ways in which it wasn't an outright discrimination, but sort of in a more of a roundabout way. One was with homeowner associations, that African Americans weren't allowed to move into these subdivisions that were being built. Even if a white family who purchased the home wanted to sell to an African American family, that wasn't allowed. And so finally there were lawsuits against the federal government saying that African Americans could not be excluded from these locations. And that's actually how homeowners associations began. That was a private way, not involving the federal government, but a private way to keep African Americans out of a lot of these subdivisions and developments that were going on around the United States. And again, we're sort of that step up into the middle class structure that in many cases was offered and made available to whites, and it wasn't to other minorities. So the federal government, understanding that there could be no outright discrimination, also looked at ways to locate, for example, schools. Schools were segregated, and so if you didn't want minorities living in a particular area, then the schools would be built in those less desirable areas of the community. And that was the only opportunity that African American and Hispanic families had for their children to get a good education. They had to live in those areas that were accessible to the schools. So that was another way of deciding where individuals were going to live. And that's a lot of, you hear of that redlining term. That really is the genesis of that term of redlining, is doing these processes, these initiatives that would cause African Americans and Latinos to move to specific areas without saying, you know, we are out and out as a federal government discriminating. Another way with the implementation of interstates as well, putting those through mostly minority communities, thereby destroying long-standing communities and neighborhoods. We have an example of that right here in the city of Tampa, Central Avenue. I would suggest that everyone go on the tour of the Central Avenue Business District. There's a historic tour through the History Center that's, I believe, every Saturday. Another very interesting one is the Fortune Taylor tour. Fortune Taylor was one of the largest property owners in the city of Tampa when Tampa began, and she was an African American, a freed slave, first woman to legally marry in the city of Tampa, first female African American to legally marry. But anyway, Central Business District was a very affluent African American Black area of town where businesses lined Central Avenue, and it was very, very robust. And the interstate came through. Now you hear two different stories about that. It destroyed that particular area, but then Arthenia Joyner, which many of you may know as a retired state senator, her father owned the Cotton Club down in a bar down in that particular area. He bought and sold 3 bars in 3 different locations from Lakeland up to Tampa that interstates were built through, and he saw it as an ability to make money off of his business. So he did understand that it was destroying that particular area, but for him personally, he looked at it as something positive, that he would have that wealth to be able to pay down to his family. So a lot of different viewpoints on this, but the color of law in essence shows how these government actions through the years have really prevented African American and other minority families from really joining in to the generational wealth opportunities of home purchase and also skilled labor. Before World War II, there was a great deal of integration in industry throughout the United States. And then as World War II ended and so many people came back and they started with these developments, African Americans weren't able to get housing close to these high-paying jobs and skilled labor locations. So just a number of different elements that he brings up and shows how federal government, through particular actions, and the private entities were able to basically discriminate against people of color. And so I will stop there and let Dr. Lewis see if there's anything else that she would like me to expand upon, or any comments or any questions from the students that are coming up.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Mayor. My name is Angela Fulwood, and I will be sharing the questions, your questions, with our mayor. A first question is, Mayor, can you tell us about how these injustices, what are your plans that they will not, that these injustices will not be repeated in the city of Tampa?
Mm-hmm. And so thank you very much for that question. And that's incredibly important. And I could actually talk on that all day long. So let me choose 3 areas that I think are significant. So for my administration, I ran for mayor so that I could serve my community once again. And I feel that we are going to change the city of Tampa more in the next decade than we have certainly in my life, and I would submit maybe historically. But there are areas that we have got to focus on to ensure that everyone is lifted up and everyone gets to share in the prosperity that we are going to realize. And having been a police officer for over 3 decades, I've worked in the neighborhoods. I know the neighborhoods. I know our residents, and I know a lot of the issues that that need to be focused upon. So our platform is going to address transportation needs, housing affordability, workforce development, and sustainability and resiliency. And I think that those are the issues that really will address a lot of these inequities throughout our community, throughout the United States, but clearly I have a laser focus on our city. And I don't, as the mayor, have a say in education in our community, but clearly that is a concern and something that I work hard towards trying to ensure that we are providing the best education for all of our students, because that really is the platform on which everyone moves forward in life. So let's look at some of the areas that we are laser focused on. One is in business, procurement, and contract equity, ensuring that, and this is a very difficult issue. So when the city provides contracts for any type of development that is going on, that we have requirements that women-owned minority businesses are included in those developments, in those contracts. And we also have what we can call sheltered contracts. So if there are at least 3 women-owned or minority businesses that can provide the services that contract requires, then we can make that a sheltered contract, and it can only be bid upon by those 3 particular groups. And that again allows women and minority businesses the opportunity to get their foot in the door, and then also to grow like some of the other businesses have been able to do historically. And then also what we have to do is, because there aren't a lot of women and minority businesses in particular areas, or professions, and so that's an issue too. We have to start at the very base by, 1, training in those particular skilled jobs and professions. 2, helping small businesses grow. A lot of times we have programs we call Bridges to Business, and we bring small businesses in and try to get them all the services that they need. You may open a business based on your skill and your education, your profession, but now you're an accountant, now you're the COO, now you're the janitor, now you're the procurement, so you have to do it all. So we're trying to help all small businesses grow, providing them mentorship, everything that we can do to make sure that we have those women-owned minority businesses that are in all of those areas that can benefit from these contracts. So that's one of the areas. Another one is housing affordability, workforce housing. If you have a good paying job, then you will be able to afford the American dream of home ownership. And so we're doing the workforce development to train in those high skilled jobs, in those jobs that are growing. A lot of the hospitality jobs are going away. A lot of the tech jobs are growing. Manufacturing jobs are growing. There are a number of jobs that there is a great future for. They're high paying, high skilled, and so we want to provide the training for those jobs so that our community is prepared for all the companies that are moving here. And then making sure that we have affordable and workforce housing that is close enough to jobs that you can take the transportation portion or cost off of your monthly budget and put that towards a home as well. So those are some areas that we're working in, clearly open to any suggestions that anyone has. And then another area that is very important, has always been, and clearly in my mind, but has been on the forefront since the murder of George Floyd, and that is community and law enforcement engagement. And we, here in the city of Tampa, do a good job with working with the community to keep our city safe. We are one of the safest cities in the nation our size, and that is, if I had to pick one reason for that, it is that collaboration between the citizens and the police department. But that takes a great deal of effort, and that is a day-to-day partnership relationship that has to be worked on. In law enforcement, we as a society ask police officers to do things that nobody wants to do, but that have to be done. And so we have to understand what law enforcement does. More importantly, law enforcement needs to understand what the community wants, because really it is the individuals living in neighborhoods that will dictate what they want from law enforcement. And that differs from neighborhood to neighborhood. You know, in some neighborhoods, it may be issues of loud noise. In other neighborhoods, it may be this increase that we have seen nationwide, and Tampa hasn't been spared from the shootings that we have had, the increase in violent crime recently. So needs for each neighborhood are different, but the police and the community have to work together, because there has to be a foundation of trust. If the community doesn't trust that their police officers are doing the right thing, then the police officers have no authority and therefore are completely ineffective in a community. And we have a number of programs that we bring the police department and the community together. Like all of the students listening today, the Tampa Police Department has a ride-along program where you can ride along 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in any neighborhood you want to ride in, just so you get to actually see what police officers do. Most people get their perception of law enforcement from TV or from one or two, interactions that they may have heard about. But if you do a ride along, you'll find that over 90% of what police officers do every day is social work. You know, out there helping people who are suffering from mental illness, individuals that have addiction issues, domestic violence, child abuse, those types of issues that they're out there addressing every day. And I do agree that there are tasks that police officers perform that would be better performed by others, social workers, mental health experts, but it's not as easy. It's easy to write defund the police on a poster, but not but not in practice. And so we have to make sure we have those safety nets in place before we start defunding the police.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor. You certainly have a comprehensive plan for us today and articulated it very well. And I do agree. I have seen your commitment to Tampa, especially with that ride along program. And I did attend a meeting with Chief Duncan, actually a community event with Chief Duncan, where he was talking about building a better relationship with the community and the police force. And so I was invited on the ride along. I think I'm going to take you up on that. So I do thank you for your leadership. And right now I'm going to turn it over to Deborah Blossom, who is the department manager and the organizer of this event. She is the department manager of community engagement. Deborah?
Thank you, Mayor. That was amazing. I love how every time I hear you speak, it's all about inclusion. So that is amazing. Thank you so much. I know that our students will benefit greatly from this. Thank you, Dr. Lewis and Mrs. Fulwood, for being the moderators. What a great session this was. I cannot wait to share it even more district-wide with more schools. And we appreciate all that you're doing and continue to move on along that line, and have a very, very great day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thanks for putting this together. And any questions that the students may have, if you just send them our way, I'll be more than happy to answer them.